Dr. Klag is the Dean of Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, the oldest and largest independent graduate school of public health in the world. The school currently has programs in over 120 countries with over 2,300 students who come from approximately 80 countries. Dr. Klag is an internist and epidemiologist who earned his medical degree at the University of Pennsylvania and his MPH degree from the Johns Hopkins School of Hygiene and Public Health. For 8 years, he was director of the Division of General Internal Medicine and was the first vice dean for clinical investigation at the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, where he instituted new policies and procedures for oversight of human subject research. Dr. Klag is a pioneering kidney disease epidemiologist whose scientific contributions have been in the prevention and epidemiology of kidney disease, hypertension, and cardiovascular disease. He was one of the earliest investigators to apply epidemiologic study methods to the study of kidney disease. In doing so, he and his collaborators were able to first determine that the U.S. was in the midst of an epidemic of end-stage kidney disease, determine the incidence of kidney disease, and publish the risk of developing kidney disease associated with blood pressure, diabetes, race, socioeconomic status, and other factors. From 1988 to 2011, he also directed one of the longest-running longitudinal studies in existence, the Precursor Study, which began in 1946. He formerly served as chair of the Association of Schools of Public Health and chair of the NIH Advisory Board on Clinical Research. Dr. Klag is the author of over 200 publications and was the editor-in-chief of the Johns Hopkins Family Health Book. My pleasure to introduce Dr. Michael Klag, Dean of Bloomberg School of Public Health and a good friend of mine, classmate from Juniata College.
Well, thank you, David. So the last part is the most important part. That's why I'm here. I saw David about a year ago when we were talking, and after that he asked me to come and speak to the Rotary Club of York. So I envisioned a small, intimate meeting, maybe sitting around the table with 6 people, and so I'm really impressed with the obvious vigor and commitment of people in this room. And I'm really honored to be here. The Rotary Club in public health the Rotary Club is we would call it an NGO. It's an NGO that we really respect. You take on big problems around the world and you commit to them both in time and money. And so it's really a pleasure for me to be here. So and I should comment on the Juniata connection. So Dave and I met when we were 18, and he made me make a commitment that I would not tell any stories about Juniata. But I will say Dave had many outstanding attributes as a student, but he was the strongest man in our class. I mean, the guy was incredibly strong because he had spent the summers working for his dad lifting cinder blocks. So when we needed something big and heavy carried up the steps, we got Dave. So, but he had many other outstanding attributes. So I'm going to, and Dave told me to talk about, let's see here, Ken. Thank Ken for his help with getting the AV, but it looks like, oh yes, right, yeah, I turned it on. So he told me that. So I'm going to talk about 2 things. One is to tell you about this place. This is the school that I lead. It's the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. But I thought to build attendance, I was entitled to talk the most dangerous animal in the world. But I didn't need to build attendance. But I don't know if anybody knows that's the title. And so I'm going to talk about this, the most dangerous animal in the world. This is an Anopheles mosquito. And why do I say that? Well, if you look at mosquito-borne diseases, we think of mosquitoes as a nuisance, and they are, and we smack them, and you may worry about West Nile, but in fact, mosquito-borne diseases cause millions of deaths a year around the world. And some are encephalitis, and you know about West Nile and the others, and Japanese encephalitis is now coming in. But a variety of other diseases you may not know about, Rift Valley fever and yellow fever, but the 2 big killers are dengue and malaria. So dengue is a virus that is carried by mosquitoes, and it causes a flu-like illness, and there are 4 different strains. And as you get infected with the different strains, because of the way the body is tricked by the infection, you can get something called hemorrhagic fever, which basically you bleed into your kidneys and other orifices, and die. So that now kills over 500,000 people a year around the world. And the worrisome thing is because of global warming, it's spreading. So you may have seen it's now in Palm Beach, it's in Texas, and it's in Europe. And this is a disease that we don't have a treatment for and don't currently have an approved vaccine. But what I'm going to talk about today is malaria. And so first, our school. So if you look at our school, as Huff said, it was founded in 1916, and this is the first dean. He was the dean of the School of Medicine at Hopkins. And like many physicians in his time, he was the founding dean of the School of Medicine in about 1880, 1875. And like many physicians, he had studied in Germany because Germany was where the research universities were, and it was really the first country where they took science and applied it to medicine. Up until about 1910, in the U.S., you were taught medicine by a lecturer. You could pay by the lecture. There was no patient interaction. There was no linkage of science to the study of medicine. And the Flexner Report changed that. And in fact, the Flexner Report called Johns Hopkins a model of its kind, because it was the only research-based university in the U.S. at that time. Anyway, William Henry Welch always had this vision of both a School of Medicine and an Institute for Hygiene that they called it. And as Dave said, I graduated from the School of Hygiene and Public Health. That's what it used to be named. And hygiene is this German word that means research for health and health prevention. And so after 25 years of being dean of the School of Medicine, he founded the School of Public Health. And he was able to do that because he convinced this man. And I thought it would be good to show his picture because you're a philanthropist and he was a philanthropist. So this is John D. Rockefeller Jr. And Rockefeller started a program to fund schools of public health. So we were the first school of public health funded, and then went and founded schools around the world. The Rockefeller Foundation has been very active in hookworm eradication in the U.S. In the first half of the 20th century, the southern U.S. was basically a developing country, and hookworm was a terrible disease. And the Rockefeller Foundation eliminated it there. So because of this relationship with Rockefeller, Welch got the money to start our school. And we're lucky. So when I was a student, and I would say to people I went to the School of Hygiene, they would back away. Women wouldn't talk to you at cocktail parties because they didn't understand what it meant. And I often used to wonder, what is it going to take? They're so proud of the name. Are they ever going to change the name? And so here's what it took. It took a big gift from Mike Bloomberg. That's Mike Bloomberg standing next to me there, who named our school around 2005. And so it takes $100 million to change the name of the school. That's Mike there, and on the person on the right is the president of the University, Ron Daniels. So now Welch was an internationalist. He understood that health was not limited by geographic boundaries or by political boundaries, and so he worked around the world, and that legacy is still with us. So this is a map of the countries where we work, and as Dave said, it's about 120 countries, and these are countries where we have funded programs. We work in other countries as well, and some of these countries we have built. They're almost all research programs, but out of that research comes a tremendous amount of service. So, for example, we provide 1/3 of the HIV care for Ethiopia. We have clinical trials in Bangladesh that enroll 100,000 women. We have thousands of women who work for us there. We have a big impact on the community. In Peru, I just came back from Peru, and it's just incredible to see the impact that we've had in Peru, both in terms of research and medicine and improvement of health. We've helped eliminate neuropsychosis in western Peru, which is a terrible disease. So we have a big impact all over the world. And I just met with somebody who came to our school to learn about it, and at the end of the day, she came and sat in my office and said, "You guys do too much. You got to stop it. You're all over the map. You're just doing everything you do." And my response to her was, "Well, when the problems of human health get narrow, we'll get narrow. But until then, we're broad." And so this is a painting we had commissioned that sort of that shows graphically the expanse of what we do at the school. At the very left-hand side is DNA. We have people who work on the very basics of DNA synthesis and repair. We have cell physiologists. We have people who do clinical trials in humans. And then we work on things like global warming and health policy that involve whole nations. And that's sort of the essence of public health. What we try to do in public health is to improve the health of human populations. And by health, we mean not just the absence of disease, but for people to reach their maximum potential. And to do that, you need a whole toolbox of things. And so we have a school structure that reflects that. So we have, for example, a Department of Health, Behavior, and Society that's primarily anthropologist that helps us understand what people believe and how they behave, and take that and do interventions. We have the usual things you find in the School of Public Health and Department of Epidemiology and Biostatistics. We have a Department of International Health at most places now called Global Health. We have POP FAM is focused on mothers and children and maintaining health. But we also, about a third of our school, you can't see it well, are basic science departments. So we do laboratory science as well, vaccine development, understand the diseases of aging and how cells chaperone molecules, and if they don't chaperone those molecules well, how things like Alzheimer's develop. And then we're the only school of public health that takes this prevention, population-based approach to issues of mental health and mood disorders. So that's, and then we have over 50 centers at the school. So faculty tend to congregate around areas of interest, and these are faculty-derived centers that relate to research. This is the one I'm going to tell you about is the Malaria Research Center. So this is a picture that we took in Africa, and the guy the blonde guy in the middle is Peter Audrey, who won a Nobel Prize in 2002 or so, and he leads our Malaria Research Institute. And this is an institute that spans the entire university. If you look at malaria, there's about 1 million people who die every year around the world from malaria. And this is a slide I took from the CDC. This is the life cycle of the malaria protozoan. It's incredibly complex. So when I was a medical student, I had to learn this for part 1 of the boards and part 2 of the boards, part 3 of the boards, and I promptly forgot. This is a simplified version, but basically it involves a mosquito that bites an infected human. The malaria parasite multiplies in the mosquito. It changes form. The mosquito bites a person. Those malaria parasites go and infects the liver of the person. They multiply there, then they come out and get into red cells and cause red cells to break, and they stick to blood vessels and prevent blood from getting in, and then the cycle starts again. So this was as a medical student, this was an incredible pain to have to learn this time and time again for something that really was a totally theoretical concept. And then I went to Africa, and suddenly what was a sterile diagram on a piece of paper became very real. So this is a child who had woken up the day before after being infected with malaria. And what happens is when you're naive to the malaria parasite, and you get overwhelming disease, you get something called cerebral malaria, and that's what kills children. And then you get some immunity from having repeated infections of malaria, so you don't get malaria parasite, you get more of a flu-like illness. But this little boy who was 5, and that's his father, Olin, had just woken up the day before. The father was overjoyed that the kid was obviously going to survive. But if you look at how he's looking, he has disconjugate gaze. He has disconjugate gaze because he's blind. He has cortical blindness, and he's barely able to move. And the man on the right there is Phil Tuma, who is the guy who's our director of our malaria center in Zambia. I'll tell you a little bit more. So he was speaking. This was the first meeting of this boy. And so at that time, when I took this picture in 2006, at that time, we were just counting survivors. We're happy people survived. But the whole idea of what is this child's life going to be now, he will continue to regain function. He'll be able to see, but he won't be normal. And there are whole villages of people like this who have suffered cerebral malaria and no longer have the intellectual capacity that they would have otherwise. So we're saving lives, but we're still, we haven't even begun to measure this kind of supply. So this experience and seeing kid after kid dying from malaria really changed my view of the importance of malaria. So to get back to this life cycle, So there's a mosquito phase, there's a human phase, it's a red cell phase, it's a liver phase, and there are ways of if you want to interrupt the malaria infection, you have to attack all of those. And malaria is incredibly wily. It's an infection where you can be infected multiple times throughout your life and not get protective immunity. You get some immunity. So when you think about trying to develop a vaccine or a treatment for this, it's really hard because if the wild type infection doesn't protect you, how could a vaccine? But anyway, but if you want to study malaria, you need mosquitoes. And Dave was at the school last year, and we took him to see our insectary. This is a picture from our insectary. So this is a netting with a piece of film, and then above that is blood. And you can see that there's a bunch of mosquitoes feeding on this, and then they're swollen and red with blood. So in Baltimore, we're able to grow these Anopheles mosquitoes, which aren't native here. We're able to infect them with either rodent malaria or human malaria, and then do a variety of studies that are only possible in 3 or 4 places around the world. It's very hard to grow these things. And we locked Dave in that room with those mosquitoes. And one of the things that we do, so the mosquito is the vector, it's spread. So we have an incredibly strong group that studies the vector and does vector biology. So these are pictures of mosquitoes, and what you see are these fluorescent proteins. So there's a red one and a green one. So we can change the genetic structure of these mosquitoes and then tell which gene has been changed by whether they glow, whether they fluoresce red or green. And what we've been able to show is that the immune system mosquito is very simple compared to humans, but nobody had studied it. So our group has been studying this and has found a way to change the genetic structure of the mosquito to make them more resistant to malaria infection. So just show you, doesn't show well from the back of the room, but on the left-hand side on the bottom, those green dots are malaria parasites growing in the mosquito. And you can see the other 3 are different kinds of transgenic mosquitoes that we made, and they're resistant. And what we found is that when you release these mosquitoes into a colony and feed them infected blood, in fact, even though we thought that the malaria parasite didn't do anything bad to the mosquito, there's a survival advantage not to be infected. So we've shown in our cultures that we can, that if you wait, say, 10 to 12 generations, you tend to replace the wild type mosquitoes with mosquitoes who are resistant to malaria. So this is one strategy that we're taking to try to prevent malaria. Another is that you probably have heard the word microbiome, understanding the flora that people have on their skin, their nose, their mouth, and their guts. Well, mosquitoes have a microbiome. And we found from looking at other species of mosquitoes that they're resistant to getting infected with malaria because of the bacteria that live in their gut. And so now we're modifying those bacteria so that they can be introduced into Anopheles mosquitoes lines. And on the top slide there is a picture of blood, and it's got lots of blue dots, and that's mosquitoes, or that's malaria growing. The bottom doesn't, but has lots of bacteria. So we found bacteria that can prevent mosquitoes from being infected. And they're the 2 big, we're trying to build a better mosquito that will someday be released into malaria endemic areas to prevent that part of the malaria cycle. So to get malaria, you need 2 things. You need people and mosquitoes, and that's it. Now, but you just can't study things in the lab because there's a whole, people are important too. You probably know about the big initiatives around the world to have bed nets, and I think Rotary International participates to provide bed nets for people so they don't get infected. Of course, that only works if people use the bed nets. And what we found is when bed nets were given out, they were very useful things for like straining stuff or shawls and things. And so part of what we do in Africa is bed net programs with the behavioral components so people use it. But we are fortunate that we have what we call the Malaria Institute of Matcha. And let me just show you where this is. This is in Zambia, down there at the bottom of the map. You see the Zambia highlighted. And Zambia, you can't see here, but basically Zambia is right north of Botswana, adjacent to Tanzania and a bunch of other countries. But in the very bottom of that yellow part is Choma, and that's where our it's about 60 kilometers from Livingston, from Victoria Falls, and it's really a very remote area that has endemic malaria. Here's a picture of what the geography looks like. You can see that in the middle there is a group of huts, and there's a group of huts on the left and the top, and there's this communal farm area. So people live by farming, and they live in this kind of low density housing. So a village would be a group of series of huts like this. And having been there several times, the people there are the nicest people in the world. And I was being driven along a road on the way to Macha, and there was a stream that had been raining and it was swollen with water. And these boys were just having a great time jumping in and doing things that as a father makes a little worried, like diving in the shallow water. And we got out to talk to them, and they were just so full of life and exuberant. So what we do there in Macha, we work with a local mission hospital. And this is the director, Phil Tuma, there, and we use state-of-the-art satellite imaging to do GIS mapping of the area, and we take that geographic data and temperature data and water data, and we overlay it with the clinical data on either who's sick from malaria and gets admitted to the hospital, or we go out into the community and we screen the villagers for malaria. And we've had a huge impact there. Just to show you, this is data from 2000 on the left. Okay, that's the year, and then you see the bars represent the number of cases of malaria. These are almost all children. So you can see we're going from over up to 400 cases a month in 2000 down to 2010. Malaria has essentially disappeared. And why has that happened? Well, one of the things that we never understood is when you have a drought and there aren't many mosquitoes around and nobody gets malaria this year, where does it hide? There's no animal reservoir, and how do the mosquitoes maintain this infected pool of mosquitoes? And what we found out through the community screenings is it's maintained by humans. That in fact, when we went out into the community for the first time and did screening, people who were seemingly not ill, 20 to 30% had malaria parasites in the blood. And so there was a human population that was maintaining the malaria year to year. So we started a program because of some new drugs for malaria that kills the form that's in people, and that the mosquitoes get infected. It kills, and when mosquitoes bite you, they get infected with a sexual phase of the called the gametocyte of the parasite, male and female. And so there are new drugs that will kill those. So we found that by going out and screening, and anybody who tested positive, we treated them with these gametocidal drugs. So we've been able to eliminate malaria in that area. So this has big implications for malaria control. And the history of malaria control, if you know about it, has been fraught with false hopes for many years and then subsequent failures. So by working with the local community, by having people who are scientists there who come to our school and go back and get trained, and by maintaining this professional collaboration, our folks are just on the verge, I think, of changing how malaria is going to be eliminated and hopefully eradicated. So I could talk a lot more, but Dave told me I can't, so I won't. But this is just a little bit of what we do in the school. And hearing Bill talk earlier about water, there are 1 billion people, for example, around the world who don't have access to clean water. And we have a Center for Water and Health that works primarily in low-income countries to build water infrastructure. It's interesting, if you look at water, there are lots of organizations that do water programs. 50% of them fail. And they fail because they don't understand the cultural and social and economic milieu in which they operate. So that's what we do in school. We reach out to communities, and whether those communities are in Africa or in Baltimore, and improve the health of the population. So thanks very much.